The trend in a lot of gaming keyboards in recent times has been the inclusion of features that focus on speed and response times. Stuff like rapid trigger and SOCD or null keybinds have been tempting more and more gamers to try out products with these features on board. Well, Asus are now throwing their hat into the rapid trigger ring with the ROG Falchion Ace HFX, a 65% gaming board which features their HFX magnetic switches and all of the latest jiggle peaking tricks. Let's have a look at it and see if it's any good. So we're very much in gaming keyboard territory when looking at the design of Asus's latest peripheral. There's RGB by the bucket load, and ROG branding front and centre. It's definitely got that ROG look to it for sure. There's a contrast between the sharp angles across the top edge and the curves around the bottom. I think it looks alright, to be fair. It skirts the line of being too gamery to my eyes, but it does manage to keep on the right side of the limits of tackiness. Asus haven't overdone it with the branding, and I think that serves the looks pretty well. The case is an all plastic affair, which follows the pattern of most big brand gaming keyboards. Some metal would have been nice, at least in the top case, but it's plastic all around. Interestingly, the keyboard comes with a plastic cover which doubles up as a tray for the Falchion to sit in. You can use it as a cover and it will keep the dust from getting under the keycaps, and then you can also sit the keyboard in it when in use and it will slightly dampen the acoustics and the typing sound, which already are pretty good to begin with, but I'll talk more about that in a little bit. I mentioned the RGB briefly there, but to circle back, the board has full RGB on every single key, as well as having a light bar across the top. That light bar doubles up as an indicator light for a touch strip, which, along with a mode button and physical rapid trigger toggle switch, set this board apart from a lot of the competition. The button in the top left corner will cycle through various functions that can be changed by sliding your finger either left or right, or double tapping the touch strip just to the right of it. There are 4 preset functions: volume, media controls, lighting control, and then switch actuation distance. And then there's a programmable button which can be set up in the keyboard software. Now, being able to change switch actuation distance without having to open software is a big positive to this keyboard for me. Gaming with fast and sensitive switches and then being able to change to something more suited to typing in a few seconds without having to faff around is genius. Over on the far right corner of that top edge is another very useful feature that works in a similar way. A toggle switch for turning rapid trigger on and off. And that switch, combined with the hardware actuation distance control, are both very, very useful for anyone looking to use the Falchion HFX for both work and for gaming. It's clearly had a lot of thought put into it and it works well. There's also 2 separate USB ports across the top of the keyboard, one in each corner, and then an accompanying toggle switch that's found in the middle. The keyboard can be connected to 2 PCs at the same time, and the connection can be switched between the 2 without any need to mess around with cables or unplugging it and plugging it back in. As this is a wired only board, that's a pretty neat feature, and it might be something that appeals to any streamers with like dual PC setups, for example. Anyone connecting it to a single PC has the option of going with either the left or the right USB port, which is a nice little touch that should help you keep your desktop looking as tidy as possible if you want to route the cable in one way over the other. Build quality is okay for a plastic keyboard. There is a bit of flex to the case, but nothing that worries me too much. Overall, everything feels solid enough and there are no rough edges or quality issues that have jumped out to me while checking it out. Taking a look at the typing experience and the sound then, the Falchion uses Asus's ROG HFX magnetic switches, and they're a key component to the rapid trigger nature or feature that's found on the board. These switches have adjustable actuation distances ranging from 0.1 to 4mm, and they've got a similar feel and sound to traditional linear switches. There's no bump or click due to how they work. There's a sensor inside that detects the movement of a magnet and it will trigger the actuation at a set distance, hence being able to adjust that distance and adjust the actuation. They've also got less moving parts than traditional switches, so they should last a bit longer. The HFXs are factory lubed, they've got POM bottom housings and walled stems, and then they've got polycarbonate top housings. They feel smooth and they feel quite solid under the fingers, thanks to the box design that keeps the keycaps from wobbling too much. They're good quality and you can tell when you start mashing the keys. The keycaps are double shot PBT and they've got a slight textured finish to them, as most PBT keycaps do have, and they feel quite robust and feel like they're going to last quite well. The legends on there are nice and bold. I'm not crazy personally on the font choice. I think something a bit less angular would look better, but this font does fit in with the ROG branding, which some people are a fan of, so I can see why Asus went with that font. Stabilisers are proprietary to the board itself, which is a little bit strange, but they do a great job of minimising the key rattle, to be honest. Let's have a listen to it and you can let me know in the comments what you think. I personally really like how this board sounds, bearing in mind that I have it on my bare desktop, the wooden top of my desk, and not on a desk pad. The case, when you use that as a tray to sit the board in, does make a little bit of a difference to the sound profile, but I think overall, with or without that case, it just sounds quite good. Sticking it on a desk pad would make it sound even better. So let's talk about gaming then, because that is what the Falchion HFX has been designed for, and it performs really well in this regard. As I mentioned earlier, being able to toggle rapid trigger on and off without needing to open any software is a really useful feature that I've found to be very convenient. Polling rate maxes out at 8000 Hz, which when you couple that with me setting the switch actuation distance to around 1mm, leads to a fast and responsive experience when gaming. Now, I often find with boards like this, it can be tempting to set the switches to the lowest and therefore the fastest setting, but it's much better to take some time and do a little trial and error and find some settings that suits you. Let's talk about speed tap then, Asus's implementation of null binds or SOCD, the feature it's quite controversial. It enables jiggle peaking and stuff like that. This is turned off out of the box. A quick tap of the function and tab buttons will turn it on. The settings for the A and D keys are already configured in the software, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So you just tap that shortcut or turn it on in the software and then you're good to start jiggle peeking round corners in games. When you turn speed tap on, it will enable your pro gamer jiggle peeking skills without the need of hundreds of hours of practice. As I mentioned in previous reviews and just now, speed tap or SOCD is still a controversial feature and it's been outright banned in Counter-Strike, but I have to admit I'm growing to really like it. And that's no different with Asus's take in this keyboard. It definitely improves my movement skills in FPS titles and it does give quite the competitive edge over players who aren't running it, hence why it's such a controversial feature. Outside of gaming then, using the board for work-related stuff, like writing this video for example, has also been a great experience. I know I keep banging on about it, but being able to increase the actuation distance with a few swipes on the touch bar before diving into some typing really is one of the most convenient features I've ever seen on a keyboard. And the 65% layout retains the arrow keys and some of the function keys, which is great for anyone who is a bit like me and uses the arrow keys for work quite regularly. The smooth and stable feel of the keys and switches result in a pleasant and satisfying typing experience that I'd be happy to use day in and day out.
As a world-leading manufacturer, CyberPower PC UK expertly builds each PC with the largest range of parts available in the UK. We handle all your packages with care and ship them directly to you on next day delivery. Visit cyberpowersystem.co.uk.
So let's talk software then. An area that's been a serious point of criticism for me in my reviews of previous Asus products. And while Armoury Crate is still a thing, and from what I can tell still has the same issues it's always had, thankfully you don't need to install the full Armoury Crate suite for this keyboard. It's amazing. That's a huge step forward, and while I'm tempted to say it's about time, which would be true, I hope this is a sign that Asus are now listening to their customers a little bit more. There's a new, more lightweight and more streamlined piece of software called Armoury Crate Gear, and it focuses on managing and customizing this device as opposed to trying to do everything else like the full-fat version of Armoury Crate does. While you can customize mostly everything via various shortcuts and controls on the board itself, the software does take things a little bit deeper. You've got tabs for key remapping. Any eagle-eyed viewers who have been watching the video so far will have noticed that this keyboard has a dedicated Copilot key out of the box. You can remap that along with all of the other keys, and plus there's an additional control keycap in the box if you want to totally de-AI the board. Then there's switch customization, which allows for a more granular control over the actuation. The software allows changes to be made in 0.1mm steps, whereas changing with the touch strip is limited to 0.5mm. I hope they can update that with a firmware update or something in the future and allow that touch strip to get that detailed with its adjustment. The touch panel tab in the software lists the various functions of that touch strip on the top of the board, along with having a programmable mode that can be set to a wide variety of stuff. Window switching, for example, could be useful for anyone that's on a single monitor to quickly switch between one application to the other. Lighting, that's a pretty self-explanatory one. All of the RGB settings live in here. Unfortunately, the option to turn off the Republic of Gamers light bar sort of thing, or the indicator light, or customize the lighting on a per key basis is missing. There are a few options in there to play with though. If you want to get more creative and are feeling brave, then you can install Armoury Crate and Aura Creator though, so the option is there. The Performance tab contains just a single setting, polling rate. Strangely, you can either go with 1000 Hz or 8000 Hz. They're the only two options available at the moment. And finally, the firmware tab will show you any available updates for the Falchion HFX, and at the time of filming, I was on the latest version, which was 1.00.39. Overall then, this single piece of software is a huge improvement in this area for Asus. It still retains the same look and feel as the dreaded Armoury Crate, but it's been seriously stripped back and had all of the unneeded fluff removed. I have to give Asus credit for that, and I hope they keep following the same path with their software development going forward. Before we wrap up the video then, let's talk pricing. Here in the UK you can pick up one of these boards for £189.99, which on the surface is a little expensive, but you're getting some pretty unique features for that, namely the rapid trigger toggle and the touch bar. I'd like to have seen some more premium materials used in the case. A bit of aluminium wouldn't have gone amiss, but on the most part the Falchion HFX sits around the same level as similar boards from brands like Corsair, Razer and Wooting. The flip side of that though is that there are other boards that feature full or partly metal cases and Hall effect switches for quite a lot cheaper, like the Newfie Air 60HE or the Endgame Gear KB65HE. To summarise then, I really quite like this keyboard. It looks decent, it sounds great, and it performs really well when both gaming and getting some work done. It's got intuitive control features that set it apart from the competition and that are genuinely convenient to use. The software is much better than anything I've ever seen from Asus in the past, and I really hope this is a sign of a shift in thinking from them as a brand. If they keep listening to customers, keep listening to critics, take on board the feedback and implement solutions that address that feedback, things are only going to get better. Build quality of the keyboard itself feels about as good as you'd expect from a plastic chassis keyboard. It's okay. And then finally, pricing is maybe a little high, but it's nothing too outrageous when considering the features on offer and what sets it apart from the competition. Anyway guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave me a like down below if you did. Let us know in the comments what you think of this new keyboard from Asus. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep up with the latest PC gaming news and reviews. If you want to check out any other stuff like our merch store or our Discord server or Patreon page or website where there's written reviews on this and gaming news and tech news and all that sort of stuff, then there'll be links for all of that stuff below this video. Anyway guys, I've been Matt. That's been the Asus ROG Falchion HFX keyboard. I will speak to you in the next one. Look after yourselves. See you later.